Hi, how you doing? And welcome back to a video on the channel where it's that time of the year again where we're going to rate your teams. If you are new to the channel, please do like and subscribe. It's been fantastic the support so far in pre-season. Hopefully we can keep it going as the FPL season starts, and let's get into it. So the first team we're going to get on the board is in fact my dad's team. He sent me in his team, asked if I'd look over it for whatever my opinion is worth. And so it looks pretty strong to me, to be honest. We've got triple Arsenal, triple Man City, Man United in there as well as Trippier. I think it looks quite a well-rounded team, at least in the starting 11. Flecken in goal could be a bargain keeper if Raya does move on. And, having a Man City defender in there and an Arsenal and a Newcastle defender is a pretty solid back three. When I put this into Fantasy Football Hub for their team rating, shout out to them, it actually came up with 96% rated, which is actually better than my own team. One thing I will just say is that it does come up to 100 million exactly, which doesn't give you much wiggle room. If you did want to make a couple of early season transfers, you'd have to make two in order to upgrade elsewhere. Um, Players like Grealish, Martinelli, potentially not going to start all the time, but by the law of averages, should start more often than not, especially if the Community Shield is anything to go by. Some strengths for this team is it's heavy on Arsenal and City players, which I like. You've got basically the top two teams in the league, so you might as well get players from that team. Like we said in previous videos, if a team's doing well in the Premier League, chances are those players are also doing well in Fantasy League. And having players from top teams such as Man United, Newcastle, even Villa, teams that are projected to do well, is absolutely fantastic start for your squad. Some weaknesses for me is that like we said, there's no money left in the bank, and there's too much Villa. Maybe I think maybe spread the teams that you've got on the bench. I think if you're in a position where you would have to bench two defenders from the same team, I think that's a bit risky. I think you can maybe find another 4.5 million defender just to sort of lighten the load, because if you're not going to want to play one of those Villa defenders, you're probably not also going to want to play the other one. Whereas if you've got a player in from, let's say, Everton, Everton might have a better fixture one week rather than Villa, and you can play that Everton defender instead. I know someone like Tarkowski is 4.5 million. Could be a nice fit instead of either Mings or Digne. Uh, Bournemouth striker on the bench as well, probably just there to fill in. Let's see who starts the season. Well, there might be a hidden gem for 4.5 million as a new striker you could have. But like we always say, you're very unlikely to go three deep in your bench in a single game week. The next team we're going to rate is sent in by my mate. Here it is on the screen right now. Now, he has not got Haaland in. That is pretty obvious from the get-go. But he has got Kane and he has got Salah. So he has kind of replaced Haaland with a few big hitters. For me, Kane isn't that far away from Haaland, and you are saving 1.5 million in getting Kane instead of Haaland. The big question for me is Kane going to stay at Spurs, or is he going to go somewhere else? If he stays at Spurs, I think he probably is a great shout. He got 30 Premier League goals last season. That's not that far behind someone like Haaland. And if you can use that money you're saving elsewhere, I think it's not a million miles away from being a good decision if you're brave enough to go without Haaland. It's also gone with Rashford. Still got Saka in the team, which obviously we think is great, and got some quite big hitters in defence as well, with Trent and Trippier both in there. It's gone with double Brighton defence. Brighton do have a good start to the season in terms of fixtures. Now that Sanchez has left, Steele should be the number one. So I do think that's a reasonable decision to have double Brighton, but a little bit risky for when the fixtures turn, or maybe they lose their form. Alvarez instead of Haaland is also maybe, we talked about maybe Foden filling in instead of Mahrez. Now Mahrez has left Man City. Alvarez could also do that. At 6.5 million, he is pretty much the cheapest Man City attacking option you can find. And if he does start games more often than not, I think he could be a really good effort to get in. Is he replacing Haaland in your fantasy league team? No, but he could help cover some of those, um, you know, goals and assists that you might be missing from Haaland if he's either scoring or assisting himself. There is a bit of a lack of Man City and Arsenal players in this team, but I guess if you've got two, three big hitters in there, you're going to struggle to round them out quite as nicely as you would have done. The team rating here is only 85%, and I think this will really go to show like how much should you put on things like predictions, based on the numbers? Because there's a chance that Salah and Kane can absolutely boost your team to the moon in terms of point scoring if they're getting a goal and assist every week or a couple of goals here and there. Trent's getting an assist and Rashford's banging in a couple of goals. I think, it's really you're depending on your big hitters to perform week in, week out. And in this team, you have got those players that have done that consistently over the seasons. So it's whether how much you want to rely on them. So the value is again 100 million, like we said in the last one. Doesn't leave much wiggle room, but I guess you can quite easily drop down from Trent if he's not performing, save yourself a couple of million and upgrade elsewhere. Um, there are more big hitters. There's a good variety of teams in here as well. So, you've got a couple of Liverpool, you've got one Arsenal, Newcastle, Man City, Man United, Spurs, Everton and Brighton in there. I think that's a good variety. So, like we said, sometimes it's good to have, more from the better teams. But if those teams for some reason aren't performing, sometimes it's good to spread the players around as well. And it means you can rotate captaincy. If you've got Haaland in your team, you're probably going to be captaining Haaland. Here, for better or worse, you've got a bit of a headache some weeks, but it does give you a bit more freedom to sort of play the fixtures and the form and say, okay, this week Arsenal have a great fixture. I'm going to captain Saka, or I'm going to captain Kane, or whatever. And it just gives you a bit more flexibility in that role. Some weaknesses for this team is there is less strength in depth. You could even argue that the starting 11 is not very strong if you're having to play Tarkowski and Douglas Luiz every week. Obviously, some weeks that'll be great, but to play them every week is maybe a little bit risky and something that you're not going to want to do more often than not. And obviously, there is no Haaland there as well. So you've got your own opinions on whether Haaland's worth it or not. Lots of people think he is because they're in the team. Let me know what you think about these teams. Let me know what you think about my assessments for there. Have I got a good analysis there? Have I missed a couple of things? Thank you very much for listening. Please do like and subscribe. It's so important, if we're trying to grow the channel, and it is really appreciated. If you do want to have a look at my latest FPL draft myself, the link to that should be on the screen right about now, and I will see you in the next one.